is that if you put someone in a situation where they are stable, where they have somewhere to go home to at night, where they're not in danger when they're at home, then they're able to access community-based services, whether that's health services, mental health services, job help services, there's all sorts of things that work better in that situation. I know it's a shock to us to think that the services first is not the way that works best, but it really isn't.
Well, it's Maslow's hierarchy. If anybody knows Maslow's hierarchy, at the bottom you have your basic needs, which is your food, clothing, water, sustenance. Right above that is safety and security. And some people can argue that basic needs is shelter, basic needs is security, but irrespective of the argument, that's got to come on one of those first two levels. And service provision is up higher on the ladder. So above that you got love and belonging, which is number 3. Above that you got esteem needs, and that's like your education and so forth. So somewhere in love and belonging or esteem and even self-actualization, which is the top of the pyramid, is where our talk therapy comes in. It's like, I can't focus on talk therapy if my belly's empty or if I don't know where I'm going home at the end of the night. But it's like, we got this, well, just pay more services. It's like, they can't focus. It's like having a kid in school who's, going home to an abusive household. He's not going to pay attention in math. It doesn't work.
Truly, one of the most clear interventions I ever made in therapy was a diabetic who came into my office first thing in the morning in crisis, couldn't figure out what was going on. I talked it over with him for a little while and realized he was diabetic. Handed him the orange from my lunch. He ate the orange, his brain turned on, and he was fine.
That's amazing. Yeah, little things that we overlook because we get so caught up in, how's your depression? Physiologically, I just need to eat.
Well, and that is often the problem. I mean, you can work with people who have terrible problems and decide that it's this thing when it's really physically based, like anxiety. Diabetes is one of those really pervasive diseases in our culture, and it masquerades in mental health ways a lot. Mm-hmm. So people who have no other triggers but diabetes will often show up with anxiety.
Interesting. So we've got the order inverted.
Mm-hmm. Because they're sending you to mental health, and you have anxiety and depression, but it's your diabetes is out of control. So until we get the diabetes under control, we don't know.
Yeah, for sure. So back to the homeless problem. Housing first model is good. Mm-hmm. Uninstitutionalized people who have houses, because some of those we call them, group homes or community-based living arrangements. That doesn't fit the bill either. Why not? Why is that insufficient?
Well, I find it insufficient because often those are run on a corporate model.
Yes.
And I find corporate models are often less flexible and less loving.
True.
And so, because to make any kind of movement in your life, you need to have a stable relationship with someone. We just do. From the time we're born on, we need to have a stable relationship with someone. It doesn't have to be a parent, but we need to have a stable relationship. And so you put someone in a home situation, 6 beds, owned by a corporation, and then the corporation decides that they need to change their staff for whatever reason. Well, if the person that they're changing out is someone that I have a close relationship with, and you put someone in there that I don't click with, I've been abandoned.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No. So that really changes the way that we function if you have continual abandonment. One of the problems that I see just in general, and as a marriage and family therapist, one of the most important things I can do in a relationship, also as a supervisor, is model a healthy relationship, right?
Right.
so often we don't see healthy relationships. And so if you've never experienced a healthy relationship with good boundaries and the ability to say, I can't do this right now, but I'll be back with you, and follow up and all of those things, then how do we ever have those relationships? And our culture doesn't help us. We don't live in neighborhoods forever anymore.
I just got done. The audience doesn't know this, but we have back-to-back podcasts today. There's like 3 of them. And I just got done discussing that exact topic in the previous podcast about how we used to work a job forever, right? And then we'd retire and move on. That wasn't that long ago. That would be like my parents' generation. Before that, we had almost like career as identity, where, you know, Joe the farmer is Joe the farmer because Joe the farmer's dad is also a farmer and his dad was a farmer, and that created predictability and stability, and also a community of, you know, farmers or whatever, and transactions in the marketplace around the same type of career path and whatnot. And these days, however, the you know, was the average person have like 7 careers or something like that, and and so that in and of itself begets a lot of inconsistency and lack of connectivity, you know, in deep, meaningful ways, not to mention our cultural overlay of disposability, where, you know, everything's disposable now and you can just replace it, and including your relationships, right? And your marriages. And
And your doctor.
Yeah, totally. Doctor.
I mean, in my life, I had the same doctor for years and years when I was young. And then I had the same couple of doctors when I was an adult, a young adult. And now it's like, oh, your insurance changed, your doctor changes.
Right.
Thankfully, because I have MS, thankfully my specialists tend to be stable so that I don't have to change all of my treatment modalities every time anything changes in my life.
Yeah, or at bare minimum, having to tell the story over again, you know?
Well, and that's why people object to changing their therapist so often, is because they don't want to tell their story some more.
Right.
One of the ways I normalize that is that telling your story again gives you new insight into it. That's a good
takeaway. That might be my takeaway right there. It's not a bad thing just to tell your story again.
Well, I don't know about you, but for me, I process things auditorily.
Same.
And it really helps me to say something out loud because I get it in a way I never got it thinking it in my head.
Well, it makes it concrete too. Once you put words to it, you can't run away from it anymore. If it's just lingering in your head, you can kind of like do some mental gymnastics and get away from the reality of whatever it is. But if you say it, yeah, especially if you say it in front of somebody, and then one level up from that would be saying it and writing it down and sharing it, because then it's really real. But that's a good reminder.
Well, and that's one of the things that I really like about couples therapy is that we can have a fight. Say we're married. We wouldn't be, but say we were married. We could be having fights over and over and over and over again. But if we sit down with a therapist and we start to have a fight, and then we have to explain what's going on in our head to the therapist, so we bring that third person in. I've now just explained it to my therapist, but I've also explained it to my partner, who I have been assuming understood my process, because I don't know why. We all are mind readers at heart, aren't we?
Right, yeah. Or at least we think the other person should be. Something like that.
Well, and we all spend a lot of time second guessing. This is what I think they're doing. Everybody.
Carl Jung, who's one of our big names in the field, talks a lot about projection. And so when we project, we can project what we think the person needs us to be, but we can also project in a way that fills in our gaps and tries to pretend that they are doing what we need them to be. And some of that is mind reading. So when you say something like, I'd rather not have pizza tonight, what you want them to understand is, don't order pizza, I want steak. But you didn't say steak, you just said, I'd rather not have pizza tonight. So the mind reading comes in with the projection of like, well, I've been with this person for a long time, and there's an implied should. they should know that alternate to pizza, steak is my favorite. But unless we directly express that, there's no possible way that that could ever be understood. So we end up communicating past each other, and that happens a lot in couples interactions, certainly boss to employee as well, and parent to child. And so in counseling and in the therapeutic office, when we speak things into existence, that the person right there next to us can clearly understand what we want. And if they don't, we have an opportunity to correct that, right?
And even if we don't know how to do that, hopefully the counselor is modeling good questioning behavior and will say, clarify that for me.
Hopefully, yes. Hopefully.
Not always, but hopefully. And one of the things I know about therapy is if you have a good relationship with your clients, they'll come back even if you miss it the first time.
Yeah.
So if I have an interaction with my client and they say something to me and I missed it, because I'm only human, if it's truly important, it comes back. So it may not come back in that session, it'll come back another session.
Right. And you're talking about good rapport building, and rapport is not magic. It's not, there is a skill set and there's some intentionality required for building good rapport. And I want to pull back the lens a little bit before this train really gets out of the station, and talk about what.
Are you sure we're not already out of the station?
We're chugging, but we can throttle down a little bit. So what I want people to understand is what you and I believe is good therapy. And I think that you and I do good therapy. And I think we model that. And there's bad therapy out there. And there's lazy diagnostics. And there's people just collecting a paycheck. And, it's not all therapists are created equal. I think what we want to do is we want to paint the picture of what people can expect in their counseling interactions. And it starts with training. So let's go back a little bit and talk about training. So you mentioned graduate degree, master's program. And I'll tee this. What's that?
A master's program, yeah.
Yeah, master's program. So you've gone through your 4 years of undergraduate studies, and then typically it's a 3-year program, at least 1 year of which is spent doing face-to-face practicum time. So you're learning how to be a counselor with live individuals, but heavily supervised by your professors, your site supervisor, that kind of thing. So you typically a 60 credit program, right? And then we finish and we graduate, and then. Sorry.
Well, no, because I taught at the graduate level too. I forgot to mention that. Sorry. It was just one of those many things I did.
Woman of many parts.
One of the thousands of things. One of the things I know about the graduate program is that when I started, it was really a 30 to 40 credit program. It lengthened while I was there because we no longer do in counseling and educational psychology those grand papers that you do in a
dissertations or theses or whatever.
This is a practice-based model. It's like being a doctor.
Right.
By the time you're done with this, you are actually practicing on people with lots and lots and lots of input and eyes on.
Correct.
Which I love. So then once you graduate, you have to get a supervisor who is a licensed therapist who has, it used to be 2 years, then is it 5 years now of experience?
So for the state of Nevada, because I can only speak to the state of Nevada, I've studied other states, but my brain's too fuzzy to bring them in right now. But for the state of Nevada, you need to have been practicing for 3 years post-internship. So during the internship period, when you are supervised, you're considered fledgling and not of your own free will and accord, so to speak. So once you complete your internship, you have to practice for 3 years. And then during that time, you can take the supervision courses and whatnot. And there's a variety of ways that you can become a supervisor that we don't need to get into here. But you could take those courses and do the practice hours. So you're essentially learning to supervise from a supervisor. And that is what allows you to become a supervisor of interns.
Yes. So, and you don't just have one supervisor when you're in your internship, which is about, 3,000 hours of supervised practice.
Mm-hmm.
3,000 hours includes the actual supervision time and some other things, but it's 3,000 hours total. Well, 2,000 hours